prevailing wind is east-southeasterly at the moment. If the Russians did blow up the power plant, the first thing that would happen is a nuclear or cloud of radiation would drift across Russian positions and then into Russia, into first of all, the city Rostov-on-Don, which has had quite a lot to deal with already over the last week. So how much is it really in Russia's interest to do?
A partial evacuation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant is raising fears of a sabotage. The chief of Ukraine's military intelligence service claims Russia is reducing its presence at the power station and earlier alleged that the Kremlin had planted explosives there. Anthony Loyd, the Times special correspondent, has been reporting from the region and joins us this morning. Anthony, good morning.
Good morning.
Just in terms, first of all, of the nuclear plant itself, who is running it, who is in charge, and what is this partial evacuation all about?
So this plant is about 560 kilometers southeast of Kyiv, and it was captured by the Russians last year in March. It's got 6 reactors there. It's Europe's biggest nuclear power plant. It's been taken over and run since by Rosatom, the Russian state nuclear energy agency. Some of the original Ukrainian employees have left. Others have taken on contracts with the Russian agency. Since then, it's been used, since being captured last year, it's been used by the Russians to store weapons and occasionally from which to launch attacks on nearby Ukrainian positions. But it's only really in the last 10 days that the Ukrainians have started to say, listen, the Russians have planted explosives there. They're going to sabotage it to cause a nuclear incident. That could be done for a couple of reasons. Now, that is challenged by other people, but things have dramatically ratcheted up over the last 3 days. There's been a lot of nuclear drills on the Ukrainian side of the river Dnieper, and things are much tenser than they were. Now there's word, according to the Ukrainian intelligence services, that Russia has begun a partial withdrawal of the nuclear plant, which is giving further rise to thoughts they might be about to sabotage it.
In terms of I suppose, the sort of thinking around the explosives and the kind of lack of consensus in some ways around whether there are explosives, to what extent there are explosives. I know that the International Atomic Energy Agency have been keeping a close eye, and indeed there was a visit earlier this week, I believe, from the IAEA.
It was actually about 10 days ago, or 9 days ago, but this was, and it was by their director as well, their Director General Rafael Grossi. Now, this was a day after the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Directorate had first said that Russia had mined 4 out of the 6 reactors there. However, Grossi didn't say that. He came back and said that their assessment of the particular placements, by which he meant explosives, was that, as he noted, not in line with safety standards. It wouldn't affect the overall running of the nuclear power plant. He didn't think they were there to blow up the reactors. America has also said, White House spokesman said about 4 days ago, that the Americans were keeping a close eye on it, but they didn't think sabotage was imminent. However, against that, you've got to weigh the fact that, in June, the Kakhovka Dam was blown up, which caused an environmental catastrophe, flooded, hundreds of communities, caused massive damage. Now, the Ukrainians had said the Russians were planning to do that. Many people didn't believe them. So it's in this very kind of opaque and tense area at the moment, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. No one knows quite what's going to happen. No one knows quite who is playing the story and to what end. I think it's very important to remember wind direction, though. The prevailing wind is east-southeasterly at the moment. If the Russians did blow up the power plant, the first thing that would happen is a nuclear or cloud of radiation would drift across Russian positions and then into Russia, into first of all, the city Rostov-on-Don, which has had quite a lot to deal with already over the last week. So how much is it really in Russia's interest to do?
Yeah. Would this might sound like a stupid question on the face of it? Would any sabotage of the plant, how would it be viewed in terms of escalation? Would that be a remarkably serious escalation? Is it something that has been prepared for and factored in on the Ukrainian side? What impact could it have in terms of the overall picture of the conflict?
That's a good question. So the Ukrainians have certainly taken preparatory steps in the last few days. We've seen all sorts of nuclear emergency drills, people going through decontamination procedures, iodine tablets being issued. This is not across the country. It's in the regions nearest to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. In an interview yesterday in the Washington Post, the overall commander of the Ukrainian operations, General Zaluzhny, said that he inferred that he was kind of living with consistent nuclear threats, which he is. Russia's always saying it's going to use battlefield nukes, or it's moving battlefield nukes around Belarus, or this, that, and the other. And he implied that this was just another one of those nuclear threats, and it wasn't going to stop him from operating. There have been voices in America raised that if the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was blown up by the Russians, then that should trigger some sort of NATO response. That's very unlikely, because I think even if the Russians did want to do that, it's quite difficult to do. I mean, practically, these nuclear reactors are, much more enhanced since the days of Chernobyl. They're coated in, layers and layers of concrete. You could sabotage the plant to get some sort of partial radiation release. Now, that could really affect the Ukrainian counteroffensive in that area. It could, poison the Dnieper River even more. Or if the Russians wanted to go for the sort of savage option, they could leave a whole lot of southeastern Ukraine radiated. But that wouldn't really serve their own ends. They're trying to, control and entrench their authority in the Ukraine that they control. They wouldn't really want to get them irradiated. So it's very difficult to see. Unlikely, if it did happen, that it would be a massive instance of sabotage. More likely some sort of partial release. But a lot of people don't believe that that's what's going to happen. Certainly the people along the banks of the river I spoke to very close seemed remarkably lackadaisical about it.
Anthony, it's really fascinating, these sort of, these standoffs, the tensions that you highlight. Thank you very much. Thank you for speaking to us. Great to have you on.